Hey guys, hope everybody out there is having a good week. So in my last video, I mentioned that I wanted to talk about those first few days, after my parents told me that I had been diagnosed with cancer. Um, Honestly, you know, the first few days, even the first few months were an absolute blur, and I couldn't really tell you too much about it. It's interesting how we block out certain things but remember other things. If you ask me about my experience as a whole, I remember a lot of the good things, and I'm not sure what that says. Or, our minds are powerful things, and it's very interesting how I remember a lot of the good things. And when I say good things, I mean the fundraiser that my town threw me, or the constant support I had from my family and friends, the presents I got, the amazing doctors and staff that took care of me. So I remember it was a beautiful day. It was sunny, it was warm, and my parents said, "Hey Paige, we need to talk to you." And of course, I thought I had done something wrong. I was probably in trouble. The first thing I might have said was, "It wasn't me, it was Alex," who's my sister. I didn't do it, whatever it is. So we had a big backyard, and I remember my parents said they wanted to go and sit down. So we had a bench that was right in front of our mailbox, like inside our yard. And they sat me down, and at that point I could tell that there was something a little bit more serious that they needed to tell me about. And I think it was my dad. He said, "Paige, we need to tell you something." I said, "Okay." And he said, "You have cancer." So honestly, I couldn't tell you the first thing that went through my mind. I can tell you the first thing that I said, and the first thing I said was, "Am I going to die?" And my parents looked at each other, and my dad said, "Not if we do everything we're supposed to." You can take that response for however you want. There's no manual on how to deal with a sick child. How do you, I'm not a parent. How do you look at a kid and tell them that they have cancer? That's not an easy thing to do. So I decided to take my parents' response to me asking whether or not I was going to die as something positive. I can honestly say that from that moment on, there was not 1 second that my mind allowed me to think anything negative. It was positivity the entire time. For me, personally, since I had such a good support system, people never let me get to the point where I was really, really sad. They kept me busy, and on top of being in the hospital all the time and that keeping me busy, there was always something to do. There was never really a time where I was alone to get too much into my thoughts. And from that moment on, it was me starting to fight. So I remember getting to the hospital, and again, I was treated down in Boston at Jimmy Fun and Dana-Farber in Children's Hospital. And, it was scary. The hospital is a scary place. It's very stark. It's not very welcoming. And, they had to start running a lot of tests. And I remember crying a lot. Nobody likes needles, and I can't tell you how many times I've been poked and prodded, and now I take it like a champ, but I had no choice. Really, I can't tell you too much else about the first few days. It seems like I've blocked it out, and honestly, until now, I don't think I've actually really thought about those first few days, but I remember everything was moving very, very quickly. The first order of business was them having to do a biopsy to remove 80% of the growth within my nose. And mind you, I hadn't been able to breathe out of my nose for about 8 months. So, after my biopsy, it was the first time that I could breathe in nearly a year, out of the left side of my nose, which was an odd feeling, but that was really when everything first started getting a little bit crazy. After my biopsy, I had to have another surgery to remove the final 20%, and because, the nose is such a small and delicate area, they had to be very careful, which is why they thought it would be a good idea for me to have chemo and, follow that with a few rounds of radiation. So I do remember after my second surgery to remove the rest of the mass, I had to wear this very cute nose brace. It was to keep my nose from being deformed after the surgery. So it was, a brace that went over my nose here, and I had some bruising under my eyes, and I decided to tell anybody that asked, anybody that I didn't actually know, that I played hockey and I got in a fight and I broke my nose, which, people didn't really ask questions about. So again, I was super lucky to not have been disfigured, because they did tell me that if I had been diagnosed even 10 years prior, I would have been severely disfigured, because they wouldn't have known how to take the mass out. So what they did was cut through my top lip and go in under that way. I don't know the terminology, but my doctors were crazy geniuses, brilliant. They said if it had been 10 years prior, they probably would have had to cut through the top of my face and pull my face down and then go in through that way, which would have left me disfigured. I think if I had known someone back then who had dealt with a cancer diagnosis before, and I had the ability to speak with them about what they went through, I feel like it would have been a lot easier for me to handle it emotionally and psychologically. My goal in making these videos is not to scare anyone. It's not to seek pity. I really hope that, if someone is looking for, some sort of comfort or answers or, just insight as to what to expect, that, I can help a little, even if it's just one person. I know the subject of this video is a bit somber, and I promise that the tone of my videos are not all going to be like this, but I think it's important for you guys to understand enough about my story before I can tell you, how I got to this specific point in my life. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.